So tonight, this evening, we're going to be learning chapter 7 of Path of the Just. It's deep stuff. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure you will. I'd like to thank North Hendon Adas and Edward for enabling us to learn tonight. And we're also going to try and raise a bit of money for an amazing Jewish school called the Nancy Rubin School, who I feel very literally close to because they're on my road on Finchley Lane. And I recommend, I've put the link, the charity link, on my chat, so it's available for those that want to chat, want to raise a little bit of charity tonight. Okay, let's learn. So the chapter is called Zerezus. Zerezus we spoke a little bit about last week, hopefully you remember, which essentially means enthusiasm, passion, love for it, meaning when it comes to spiritual growth. And by the way, I think it comes to if you're going to be successful in any area of your life, whether it be work, relationships. If you're not passionate, if you don't really want to be there, if you're not literally giving it all, it's going to rarely succeed. And therefore, if you're going to get close to Hashem, if you're going to become the highest version of yourself, the Ramchal explains at the beginning of the book, the first phase is called Zehirus, which is being careful, being aware, being cautious, knowing when to put the red light. Once you're a now spiritual, now more balanced soul, more mature soul, that more refined, that knows how to put the red light, now can you put the green light? Now can you spiritually grow with love, with enthusiasm, with passion? So that's the intro. So let's go for it again. If you haven't got the book, you should get one. I recommend you should buy a book called Path of the Just, Mesillas Yesharim. But I think on the website called Sefaria, you could probably download it and look up Path of the Just, chapter 7. Here we go. Says the Ramchal, there are two elements to alacrity. And there's another translation for passion. There's two elements. It says, Koidam hascholas hamaisa. There's one dimension which is prior to the action, and one, especially it says, V'achad acharei kain, which could either mean once the action started or even post the action, which we need to understand. Again, so he's saying there's two elements to passion. One prior, V'echad acharei kain. He'll explain a bit more what that means. Which means, listen up, everyone. Let's take an example. Let's say you want to pray. So let's say you want to pray. I know Verda likes her Tehillim now. She's getting stuck into her Psalms, which is amazing. It's her Tehillim. So before you do your Tehillim, Verda, before you do your prayer, before you do your Psalms, if it's going to be from the perspective, can't really be bothered to do it. I've got so much on. You know what? I know I have to. I know it's probably the best thing. But if you're doing it from a place of, you're quite miserable, almost a place of duty. If it's from a place of, it's like if you go to work and you don't really want to go to work, but you want to get paid. So you need to pay the mortgage. So you need to go to work. If you go to work and you don't really want to be there, it will come out in the way you work. And spiritually, if you pray, but you don't really want to be praying, then your prayer isn't going to be as effective as it needs to be. Similarly now, the learning we're doing. If you're like, I think it's a really good idea to learn. They tell me it is. Don't really want to. I've got lots of other things. A really cool thing on Netflix I want to watch. Right? If that's where your attitude is, then when you're learning, even now as you're listening, it's going to be like half-hearted. You're going to have your eyes on other things. You don't really want to be there. There'll be a limit to how much spiritual gain you can get. As opposed, the Ramchal says, prior to doing action, you need to stop and you should literally feel excited about it. Because by the way, your soul is excited. Your neshama is truly excited. There's nothing more sweet. One of my good dear friends, Johnny Chippick, may he rest in peace, used to say that when I helped him come to Torah, return back to his fold, he used to say, Rabbi Hill, Torah is so sweet, sweet like honey. Sweet like honey. I want more people to be able to enjoy the taste of the honey. And he got me to go and film for him like little 2-minute pieces of honey, he called it, that he could give over to his friends. So if before you're learning Torah, you're excited to learn, it's delicious. It's like, imagine lahavdil ben kodesh l'chol, which means obviously we shouldn't compare it in any shape, way or form. But let's say before you go to your favorite restaurant, right, and you haven't eaten all day, which by the way I really recommend. If you go to a really nice restaurant, try and like not eat for ages, and then you'll enjoy it more, right? And then beforehand, you're super excited to go. You're full of zerizas. You really want to go. If that's the case, then that's the way it should be for Torah. Before Torah, you should almost be like, I can't wait. And that attitude prior will make a huge difference to the spiritual gain and the spiritual benefit and the closeness to Hashem you can achieve from the Torah and the prayer and the charity. You know, literally as I'm speaking to you now, someone's just messaged in a WhatsApp to me, and unfortunately I still get to see my WhatsApps as I'm teaching, which is a real shame. But so this WhatsApp came in, which was to sponsor him for a charity. So I made a decision as I'm learning. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And please God, when I finish, what's really important is I want to be able to do it, you know, with excitement, with joy. Okay, I'm now going to do the mitzvah of giving charity. In fact, the Hasidim used to create a whole prayer you're meant to say prior to an action just to get you motivated, to get you focused. It's called L'Shem Yichud, because they were worried just when you make the blessing prior to the mitzvah. So for example, there's a blessing I say every morning before you learn Torah, but they would make a blessing before that called L'Shem Yichud. So before I make the blessing to put on tefillin, but in the words of Hasidim, they would put a prayer before that just to get you focused and excited and enthused. And just by the way, for those singles out there, I really recommend the same idea before you go dating. Before you go dating, then again, you shouldn't be like, ugh, another date. Really don't want to go on that date. You're not giving it a good chance to succeed. It should be, Hashem, I'm trusting you. You're going to help me find my soulmate, because you said in the Torah you want us to get married. It says it's not good for man to be alone. It's not good for women to be alone. And therefore, for your sake, Hashem, so to enable me to be able to keep the mitzvahs better, help me get married. And then there should be almost excitement that you're on your way to meet your potential husband. That's the attitude prior to an action. So the Ramchal is saying a very deep secret. It's not just how you do it. It's what you feel on the way to doing it. It's prior. It's the pre-analysis. It's why are you doing it? Nice to see you, Lewis, on Facebook. Welcome. So that's the idea, that before your action, there should be passion, there should be excitement. It's like, I don't know, for those Chelsea fans who are not Jewish, who went to the Champions League final yesterday, they must have been super excited beforehand. And the Man City fans, right? All year, their dream is to get to the Champions League final. They must have been as excited as anything. Literally, probably didn't sleep the night before. They're dreaming of it. So that's the way we need to be when we do a mitzvah. We need to be incredibly excited before we do mitzvahs. Very, very excited before we do mitzvahs. So, then he says, like this, before the mitzvah, you should not delay its performance, which by the way is going to be one of the deepest secrets to your success, my friends. That moment that mitzvah comes, if you don't just do it there and then, Mañana may never come. It may never come, because the Yetzer Hara is going to say, oh, let's do it tomorrow. Like I know this charity that just came on my WhatsApp. If I don't say I'm going to do it straight after class, then tomorrow there'll be another reason to delay, another reason to procrastinate. So as the Ramchal says, rather when the time arrives, when the opportunity for its fulfillment presents itself, that's the point. As soon as it presents itself, when it enters its mind, you must react speedily without delay to seize the mitzvah and do it. You shouldn't procrastinate at this time, for no danger is graver than this, as the Ramchal. You have a chance to do a mitzvah. If you, God forbid, delay it, you may never get that chance ever again, because the Yetzer Hara is a cunning rogue. Every new moment can bring some new hindrance to the fulfillment of a good deed. So I want you to think that now. Over the next 24 hours, mitzvahs are going to come in front of you. Do it there and then. Don't think about it, just do it there and then. Look at life as almost as the Rabbi Yitzchak Bedichev says, love messages between Hashem and you. So opportunities coming that way. So that WhatsApp that came to me, which funny enough came last week, and I wasn't so focused, so I didn't really see it. Now I've seen it. So it's really coming from Hashem to say, Avi Hill, you need to give more tzedakah tonight. Otherwise it wouldn't come. So some of you cynical people are saying, 1 minute, but I'm getting loads of them the whole time. Beseder. So Hashem wants you to give lots of charity. It doesn't have to be a lot. You can give a small amount, even just a small amount. So I might have told some of you this before. Rabbi Dessler says it's better to give 1,000 times £1 than one time £1,000. Because every time you do an act of giving, every time I put my credit card in the charity campaigns, it's another mitzvah, it's another erosion of my ego, it's another step closer to Hashem. Where if you just do one big one, you might argue, but you're making more of a difference. But Hashem will argue, but you're still really the same person, just with a little bit of less money now. Whereas the more you do a mitzvah, the more you give charity, is getting closer to Hashem. You're chiseling away the ego, chiseling away. It's the same idea with prayer. You make one prayer once a week, that's one thing. You start praying every day. It's another thing. You start praying 3 times a day. Before you know it, you're making yourself a vessel which is ready to pray, essentially. And I want to share with you a beautiful story on the idea of if you get a mitzvah, try and act straight away. I'll tell you this story, see what you think. There's a Hasidic master called Reb Nachum of Reb Nachum. And Reb Nachum was approached by a man who was in desperate need of money to marry off his daughter. And he said he needed 150 rubles, which in those days was quite a lot. Nowadays it's about £10,000 to marry off your daughter. So 150 rubles. The following day, a wealthy chassid came to Reb Nachum of Chernobyl and said, I want to give you a donation for charity, any charity of your choice. And how much was it? Obviously, it was everybody 150 rubles. It was exactly that amount, 150 rubles. So Reb Nachum was overjoyed and sent for the man because he was about to give him the money. But while he was waiting for the man to come, Reb Nachum began to think, the 1 minute, what does Hashem really want? To give 150 to one person, that's quite a big call. Like giving £10,000 to one person, maybe he should give, let's say, 75 rubles, which is a nice, respectful sum. And then he can give 75 to other things. And then he's got to find the other money from someone else. So I want you to think about it. What would you do, right? Someone comes to you saying they need £10,000 for a very good cause. And then a £10,000 opportunity comes your way. Should you give it all to one person? Or should you divvy it up a bit? Should you divide it up a bit? So what did Reb Nachum think? He said, I've got 2 different opinions. He goes, one's from my Yetzer Hara, one's from my Yetzer Tov, but which is which? So interesting. Reb Nachum understood that his dilemma of should I give it all to one person or should I give it half to one? Let me ask you now, you can message in. What would you do? Message in the answer. What would you do if you're Reb Nachum? Would you give it all to one person or would you give it half-half? What do you think Hashem wants you to do? So, whilst Katie's going for the half, what else? Anyone else like to put in? Would you go half or would you give it all to one? By the way, it's a good opportunity to see, are you even listening to me? Or have really got something else going on? Let's see who's listening. Okay, so Red is also going half. And by the way, I think logical, you give half, but that's why Verta and Katie are not a Hasidic Rebbe called Reb Nachum. Because Reb Nachum understood, he understood the following. The first impulse, which was to give the entire sum to the man, that's the Yetzer Tov, that's the good inclination. And then, the more you think about it, that's giving the Yetzer Hara the opportunity to get in. I'm seeing Lewis also said 50-50, which is really interesting. Right? But that wasn't the question, David. I'm saying you actually have an opportunity. David came to Reb Nachum and gave him the whole 150 rubles to give out. So he had the opportunity to give it all to one person. So he could have given it all to one person. And the question was, should he give half of it? Because he had it. Should he give half to one person and someone else? Or should he divide it up? And the answer is so beautiful. Listen up. It's saying, and I want you to see the divine providence. Normally the first impulse is the right one when you're trying to do a mitzvah. Okay, the answer is give it all to one person. Meaning, if someone comes to you And for an example, they say to you, help me, we need £10,000. I really need £10,000. And then you come across a philanthropist who says, you know what, I've got £10,000 here for a charity of your choice. That's Hashem! Are you joking? Someone says 10,000, and then afterwards someone says 10,000. Hello, everybody. If you can't work out that's Hashem, you need to start opening up your eyes to life. There's no such thing as a coincidence. Lewis, you listening to me? No such thing as a coincidence. Everything comes from Hashem. So that means in your own life, and I've had this many, many times, an opportunity to do a mitzvah comes your way, but it costs £1,000. And then all of a sudden, you get some rise at work or something, you think £1,000 comes in. Where do you think that comes from? And I'll never forget, I was in Israel, and unfortunately, when I was doing my work in Tel Aviv, you give it over. When I was in Israel, so I was there in Tel Aviv, and one of the donors pulled out the project, which basically left me, I don't know, I think it was about, let's call it 5,000 shekel a month short. So £1,000 a month short to continue the job. And I wasn't, and I really wasn't sure how I was going to raise that £1,000 a month to be able to do it. So I prayed. I literally opened up Tehillim, and you should remember this, maybe write this down if you ever need a salvation. Tehillim number 13 times. There's a famous Masorah, famous tradition that you say Tehillim number Yud Gimel 13 times, ideally with tears. You cry out to Hashem, and often you see a very beautiful salvation. And I literally just finished doing that. I stepped away, and one of the rabbis there at the kollel said to me, Rabbi Hill, I can see some of the work you've done in Tel Aviv. I think it's really exciting. Would you be interested in partnering our kollel and doing some partnership with us so we can be part of it as well? Do you know how much they gave? Exactly to the shekel, that 5,000 shekel. Not more. It wasn't 6,000. Hashem didn't want me to have a bit extra. Or 7,000 or 10,000. He wanted me exactly to have the penny, the shekel, the agara that I needed. Amazing. Really amazing. So therefore what I'm trying to say is Reb Nachum was able to understand. Someone needed 150 rubles, and then 150 rubles came in. Obviously, he's meant to go to that person. But then you stop and you start thinking about it. And by the way, in life, this is why many people make very bad mistakes. Because actually, sometimes the more you rationalize, and normally it's good to rationalize, but sometimes over-rationalization. Sometimes when we're contemplating too much, then the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, can get in and confuse you. At times, there is nothing more rational than the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara can be the most super rational, logical professor when the Yetzer Hara wants. And by the way, there are many very, very clever people that are really controlled by the Yetzer Hara. So just because sometimes it's a very logical thought doesn't mean it's the right thing. The Yetzer Hara knows how to get into this arena of logic to stop you doing a mitzvah. That's why it's actually complicated. That's why all try and have my number. So when you have a question, a dilemma, what to do, you can message Rabbi Hill, help me out here. On one hand, I think one thing. On the other hand, I think the other. And you need someone objective. That's why the Mishnah Pirkei Avot says, Aseh lecha Rav, make for yourself a rabbi so you can have objective help. Because sometimes it's really tricky to work it out for yourself. What does Hashem want? What is the right thing? It seems rational. And therefore, and one of the litmus tests we say, so Rabbi, what's going to get you closer to Hashem? And now we've learned another tactic tonight, which is normally, what is your impulse? What is your first thought? What is essentially your gut feeling? Rabbi Nachum's gut feeling was, someone came asking for 150 rubles. 150 rubles came his way, give it all straight away. That was his first go-to thought. Then he started thinking about it. He's like, whoa, 1 minute. Let's start sharing it out. So he realized that first thought, that's the Yetzer Tov. So activate generally your first thought if it's a good thing. And by the way, if you're not sure if it's a good thing, then as I said, you can WhatsApp me anytime. No problem. Are you with me? So that's the first idea. That's the first idea. Then he says like this. Let's go into the words of the Ramchal. He says, that's why we've learned from Mechilta, this famous Mechilta, which says, Ushmartem es hamatzos. you need to watch over the matzahs. You know this idea called shmura matzah? You know that? On Seder night, we have to have shmura matzah. We have to have special, not any old matzah. It's a special matzah which was watched over from the time of its baking or from all the time. From the Torah says you should watch over the matzah. But now the Mesillas says this amazing line, Mitzvah haba liyodcha al tachmitzeno. When a mitzvah comes your way, do not procrastinate. Do not delay. Do not wait around. A mitzvah comes your way, do it there and then. Because your Yetzer Hara will gobble you up, and before you know it, you won't want to do it anymore. Inspiration doesn't last. That's the mission of Birkei Avos. Ve'im lo yachshav emosai. If not now, when? Right? You need to do the mitzvah as soon as it comes your way. As soon as it comes your way. Let me give you a few examples of this. One example and then one bit of explanation. And by the way, you see the word for matzah and mitzvah is the same, right? It's the same root. The word and the whole point of making a matzah has to be done in a very, very quick way, as we'll see soon. But let me give you a piece of Talmud. There's a Talmud in Ketuvot, if you want to check it out, in 62b, which says the following. At the end of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's week of Sheva Brachos, Reb Chanina ben Chachinai was leaving for the yeshiva, where he was to study Torah for 12 interrupted years. You know the story, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was going to go for 12 years. And Reb Shimon asked Reb Hanania to wait for him. Reb Hanania chose to leave immediately, considering that Reb Hanania had the opportunity to travel with Shimon Bar Yochai. Can you imagine? You get a chance. What would you do, right? You're about to go on a flight, or you have this great tzaddik that says, whoa, wait a minute. You know, wait a few days and then it will go together. So most people logically will say, I'll wait, sure, to escort the tzaddik to you. If you had a chance to escort the great Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai who wrote the Zohar, I'm in. You know, you'll wait, you'll change your plans. But amazingly, Reb Hanania didn't. He's quite cheeky, quite chutzpahdik. He didn't wait for his teacher. He just, I'm off. Why? So now you know the reason. The answer is, says Reb Chaim Shmulevitch, the Rosh Yeshiva of Meir, that there's no danger like the danger of delaying. Once Reb Hanania decided to go and study Torah, he didn't even want to risk even the slightest postponement, lest some obstacle arise and spoil his plans. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that beautiful? Meaning you make that decision. So that's why a lot of people, they make a decision, I want to go and live in Israel. I want to go make an aliyah. And then all of a sudden, something comes in the way, and something gets in the way, and this comes up, and now Corona's happened. Before you know it, it was just a fantasy. Next time you make a decision, I want to go and live in Israel, go! Just go! Get in touch with Nefesh B'Nefesh, and then just go! Don't give it a chance. Don't discuss it with the family. Just get on the plane. Because once you've made that decision, you want to do a mitzvah, if you don't act there and then, it may never happen. You know, and I'm not preaching to the converted, but some of the girls say, but for the boys, Lewis can hear. Some of the boys, they're going out with a girl, and they have just a feeling, oh, she's the one I want to propose. If they don't activate that feeling there and then, that feeling may never come again. Which, in other words, that moment, opportunity to do a mitzvah comes in, that's where this idea of cold feet comes from. People start getting panicky, and people start getting worried and getting scared. So what we were trying to say is the Yetzer Hara is the master of cold feet. He's the master of creating obstacles, creating issues. A mitzvah comes your way, do not delay. It even rhymes. I like that. Again, mitzvah comes your way, do not delay. Okay? And then let me explain to you a bit more on the matzah. So Rabbi Dessler, the great Rabbi Dessler, the book, if you haven't got it, please buy his books, which is called Strive for Truth. It will change your life. Strive for Truth, or in Hebrew, Michtav Eliyahu. I really recommend them. He writes like this. He writes that matzah, when matzah dough is left standing, so that it leavens, its quality changes. It rises and becomes a different type of dough. Similarly, delaying the performance of a mitzvah does not merely create the risk of it being lost, but actually affects a qualitative change in it. The very fact that one waited and procrastinated and thereby risked the possibilities of the mitzvah being lost comprises the quality of the mitzvah and introduces an impurity to it, because the unnecessary delay implies that he attaches insufficient It is now tainted with impurity or lethargy. So postponing a mitzvah or dawdling in its performance causes it to leaven in the spiritual sense. Amazing, Rabbi Dessler. On the other hand, if you perform the mitzvah quickly, energetically, he only keeps it free from impurities, but he also infuses it with zerizus. So what we're saying here, my friends, is that it's an amazing idea. Next time a mitzvah comes your way, yalla, do it yesterday. Just do it yesterday. Because even just waiting around, straight away, it's now tainted with chometz. Chometz is like ego. It's doubt. Safek is gematria Amalek. Safek is doubt, means Amalek, our spiritual nemesis. The moment doubt comes in, it's already spoiling the mitzvah. It's spoiling it. It's not as pure anymore. It may not even ever happen. So I think Rivka's joined us there from the land of Israel. So Rivka, the mitzvah comes your way, just get on with it. Just do it without thinking. Don't start, let me process. Let me think. And by the way, the first few chapters was all about processing. So there's a time in your life when you need to process, no doubt. Let's try and work out that when that is. When there's danger, we need to process. When it's like maybe huge life decisions involving lots of people, processing is needed. But it's a mitzvah. The Sefer Torah comes in the shul, you stand up. And pre-COVID time, you go and give it a kiss. End of. Someone comes like this and says, can I have some money? You just meant to put, if you got some money on you, put some money in their hand. End of. I was reading a story about this big philanthropist. He didn't just put money in people's hands. Again, pre-COVID time, he would give them all a hug and a smile and say, I wish you well. So he literally gave his charity, and this is a big philanthropist, a big millionaire, that literally, he was very religious and he was known whenever he goes to synagogue, a huge queue of people would be literally attack him and go for him. And yet he was happy to give every single one a hug. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that beautiful? In other words, we shouldn't just give, I have to give, all right, I give. And you put this like miserable look on your face. You know, it's not your money anyway. It's Hashem's money. He's loaned it over to you to do good with it. If you're not going to use it for good, he's going to take it back anyway. That's why the word for money in Aramaic is zuz, which means lazuz, to move from here to there. Money in Aramaic is called zuz. It moves. It's not really yours. It's currency, right? It's not your own. And do you know how I can prove you that, my friends? Because when you leave this world, you can't take it with you. Ironically, the only thing you can take with you is your mitzvahs, is your good deeds. That's the only thing you can take with you, your Torah. The Torah we're learning tonight, you can take with you. You can now sit in the Ramchal's talk of Mesillas Yesharim. How cool. Hope to be there too, and I'll see you there. For I will be allowed to sit there and learn and lap up his Torah and lap up his honey. Because we've now connected to that mitzvah. Okay, let's continue. So then he says the following. He writes the following. Alacrity zerizus is indeed a virtue of perfection, which man's nature prevents you from attaining completely in the here and now. So he who overcomes his nature, in other words, your natural tendency is to be lethargic, is to be tired. How many of you are feeling a bit tired? Any of you feeling tired? Right? It's amazing. Sometimes I do like meditation groups. People love that because that's the best talk, because then they just fall asleep because the body just wants to, like, is feeling tired. Right? We're not doing meditation tonight, so stay awake. Right? And says the Ramchal, Hashem will present you with a reward in returning for pursuing and overcoming your tiredness. So again, Hashem wants to see how much you want. It's just a bit like, as I said to you, it's your attitude, right? If you invite someone to your house for a nice dinner and they really don't want to come, and you can tell they really don't want to come, and they come in late with a really grumpy face and you don't want to really be there, it's not going to be the most pleasant experience for you, and you don't feel really good about yourself. So Hashem is giving you an opportunity for a mitzvah. Hashem is giving you an opportunity for a mitzvah. He wants to see a happy face. He wants to see, hopefully, you're up for it. You're excited. It says one of the biggest gifts we can ever have is the fact that Hashem gave us the Torah. It's the biggest gift. It says in the end of Pirkei Avos, Rotzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu lezakos es Yisrael. Hashem wants to merit the Jewish people. Lefichach hirbo lehem. That's why we have so many mitzvahs. Hashem hasn't given us so many mitzvahs because he wants us to become like OCD and just be like totally neurotic about so many things. God forbid. Hashem gives us, because he gives you so many opportunities of closeness. Some of you like the more learning Torah. Some of you like the more the kindly. Some of you like Shabbos. Some of you like kosher. There's so much for everybody to really get stuck into love and into enjoy. That's why there's so many opportunities. It only comes to the fact that he loves you, and therefore, if we, God forbid, go on a very do I really have to? Are you sure? There was someone to me last week who was complaining about the idea of having to fast on Yom Kippur. It's like, really? It's like, I really struggle with fasting. And he was missing the whole point. Because fasting is the biggest gift we can get. It's an opportunity for us to have kapara, to have atonement. There was a big golfer who's 50 years old, who gives me hope, because I'm about to turn that, who won the big tournament last week, called Phil Mickelson. And he said at the end, they said, what made it, how come all of a sudden you're playing so well? He goes, I fast now 36 hours every week. He goes on a 36-hour fast every week. It cleanses the body. Maybe it really cleans me out. So actually, even the gift, fasting is a gift. So we have to understand, when Hashem gives us mitzvahs, Hashem just knows his clients. He knows Jewish people who really struggle with the fasting. So he doesn't ask us to fast like Phil, 36 hours every week. Forget about it. He's not going to have too many punters then, right? But Hashem, once a year, Yom Kippur, can you manage once a year, Jewish people? We'd like you to do a few extra ones rabbinically. On Tisha B'Av will be nice. On the 17th of Tammuz, fast of Gedalia, 10th of Tevet, fast of Esther. But only in the Torah, Hashem only mandates it once a year because he knows his clients, Maybe other nations likes to drink, but we do like our food, right? So that's why we moan and grumble when there's only once a year. Oh my gosh. And we could probably do with fasting so much more. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is a mitzvah comes your way. What we shouldn't do is grumble and moan and complain and criticize and woe me and then play the martyr card. Oh my gosh, I'm so amazing. Most people aren't doing anything. And I'm eating a little bit of kosher once a week. I'm the holiest person on the planet. We shouldn't be going down that route. We should be saying a mitzvah comes our way. Wow, what a gift from Hashem. What a pleasure. Okay, and then he says like this. He says, on the other hand, zrizus, enthusiasm that follows the commencement of the deed is necessary. Okay, that was the prior. Okay, so we got that. So before the action, you've got to be up for it. Now, what about post the action? Why is it important to also be up for it afterwards? What on earth does that mean? Says the Ramchal, that one who has seized the mitzvah, he should hurry to complete it, and not just to make things easier for himself, like one who wants to get rid of a burden. Rather, he should hurry out of fear that otherwise he might not be able to complete it. So in other words, once you've started the mitzvah, it's critical that you complete it. And then you should not be distracted. So we're saying is now the mitzvah started. At that moment when the mitzvah starts, nothing should interrupt. Nothing is more important than completing that mitzvah. And that's what the Ramchal is saying. And he says something very scary. I wasn't going to say it, but you know what? I'm going to say it. He says there's a medrash that says, and it's really scary, Kol ha'maschel b'mitzvah ve'eina goyme, I say. Someone who commences the mitzvah but doesn't complete it. And then he says something which is very shocking. I would never dream of saying, but the Midrash is saying that. He says he does not complete it, he will bury his wife and children, God forbid. Now, what does that mean? If you don't complete a mitzvah, let's say you start Kiddush and you don't complete it, you're going to bury your wife and children. You haven't murdered anyone. You haven't completed a mitzvah. Why is it so bad? So I think metaphorically what it's saying is, I don't think it's literal, but it's trying to teach a point. It's trying to scare us and trying to say, if we knew what's actually happening the moment you start a mitzvah. We say you're opening Pandora's box. So maybe, I've never known who Pandora is. Maybe someone can tell me the legend of what Pandora box comes from, right? She sounds lovely, lovely lady, right? But just imagine, you're now opening, Miriam's box. So the Miriam's box is the mitzvah box, right? You're opening a mitzvah box. So when you're opening a mitzvah and you start the mitzvah, it's the Midrash is saying, Hashem is now excited, all your relatives in heaven are watching, so much is going to be down to it. God forbid to walk away once you've started it. God forbid to say, I'm out, I'm done. Nah, I'm not going to complete it. What would be a good example? Maybe a good example, like you get a charity thing coming your way and you're about to start the credit card, you're about to start putting it in, and then like many times with me, all of a sudden there's glitches in the machine, right? All of a sudden it's not simple. You know, they ask for more information, they say that's not enough. It's very easy to say, you know what, I tried. C'est la vie, your problem, get yourself a better system next time. You've now opened up Miriam's box to do a mitzvah. We'll say Katie's box, right? You've opened up a very, spiritual box to do a mitzvah. Do not finish. In other words, don't just, God forbid, interrupt it. Don't pause it. Like on your videos, you press pause. Never pause the mitzvah. Play till it's finished. Which basically means you've got to stay with me now for another 22 minutes, right? Because that's when the mitzvah finishes, right? So when you start the mitzvah, you can't just I'm out, I'm busy, I'm distracted. It's almost worse to start the mitzvah and to stop than not even to start. Because it's super rude. It's a bit like, as I said, your parents have called you over to come and join you for Friday night dinner. You walk in, you say hi, and then, nah, can't be bothered for this. I'm off, I've got a better offer. And you just walk out and leave them hanging. Super rude. It would have been better not to have come. So every time a mitzvah comes our way, let's do whatever we can to complete it. Obviously, if someone becomes very ill or something extraordinary happens, okay, then that's different. You now become under a new category called onus. Onus means it's unavoidable. Okay, so then you'd be allowed to end it. But if it's just because it's inconvenient, or you can't be bothered, or the Yetzer Hara is saying, I've got a better offer. Started a mitzvah, complete it. Maybe say, my dear, in Shul, Amidah. Can you imagine the Amidah? You start the Amidah, and let's say you've got to this place, now you're doing the Amidah. You're saying the 18 blessings every time. You get to the first 6, and oh my gosh, this is really long. I haven't got a lot of time. All right, I'm off. At least I did 6. So again, for someone who's never done it before, Hashem loves those 6. But for the person like myself, who I'm doing it 3 times a day, if I would say to Hashem after I've started 6, actually, God, it's a bit inconvenient me, I'll see you tomorrow. Hashem would not be impressed. Hashem is going to say, Aviel, where are you going? Are you joking? You're going to turn your back on me. And then Hashem says, I'm going to turn my back on you. God forbid. If we, God forbid, turn our back on Hashem, we create a ripple effect. Hashem tzilcha, Hashem is your shadow. Chas v'sholem, Hashem turns our back on us. And that's why you've got this absolutely petrifying medrash that says somebody who starts the mitzvah but doesn't finish it buries his wife and children, which means he doesn't get to complete his family that he started. It's really that metaphor for you've turned your back on God. So let's not do that. And then he has another example, says the Ramchal. He says, Ein ha-mitzvah nikres ela al shem goimra. Really, the mitzvah, says King Solomon, is only ascribed when you've completed it. You've got to complete the mitzvah. As I said, with prayer, you've got to finish the 18 brachas, kiddush. You can't just pick up your cup and say, good Shabbos, and have a drink. Right? You pick up your cup on Friday night and you start by Erev Vayivok Yom HaShishi. Complete the kiddush. Finish it, even in English, right? If you don't speak Hebrew. But complete it. Complete it. You imagine if you did a big essay. My daughter's just finished her A-levels, right? If she kind of started an essay and then you leave it halfway, they're not impressed. Examiners are not impressed. For whatever reason, you've left it halfway. That means it's actually rude. It's actually super rude. You can't half sign the check. It's not going to work. It's not going to cash. We want to cash your mitzvah. You've got to complete it. But more so, I just think it's a huge bizayon. It's a disgrace to Hashem that you start it and then you turn your back. You literally turn your back. And either way, that's why, I don't know if you know, when you, please God, I give you all a blessing to be able to go to the Western Wall soon. So say Amen. So we go to the Western Wall. When you come back from the Western Wall, you shouldn't turn your back. You're meant to walk back like the way you're meant to walk back from a king. And it's really the same in a synagogue as well. You shouldn't really just turn your back as you walk at the end of the synagogue, especially if the Sefer Torah is out. You shouldn't turn your back on the Sefer Torah. So we shouldn't turn our back on Hashem, God forbid. And that's what it means to incomplete a mitzvah. And then he brings an example. He says, have you seen a man, says King Solomon, who's quick in his work? He will ultimately stand before kings. He will not have to stand before those who are lowly. So meaning the blessing you get on the good news better than the curse that the Medrash gave. We don't like that. But we like the blessing, which is if you're quick in your work and you complete the mitzvah, then you'll ultimately stand before kings. And you won't have to stand before those who are lowly. So, in other words, if you know how to stand before the king of the world, Hashem will give you opportunities to stand in front of really important people in life. Like rabbis, right? Important people that really are going to elevate you, that you're going to feel really loved, you're going to feel really cared for, because that's the power of completing the mitzvah. And he gives another example. And he says that's why King Solomon, when he got the opportunity to build the temple. By the way, can you imagine? It doesn't get a bigger mitzvah than that to build a temple. He did it so fast. Maybe in Israel, that's why they do this amazing, like, fast building temples, no? Like building, it's amazing. When you go to Israel, like, you have some builders there. Within a few weeks, the building's up already. You ever seen that? Whereas in England, it can take like 10 years. Right, for the building to be complete. And if you this building works and building works and still building works. Israel, they like start it, bang. You know, it can be finished so crazy quickly. Maybe it comes from this beautiful idea that when King Solomon built a temple, built the Beis Hamikdash, he did it so speedily. He did it so fast. And now we've seen a very deep reason why that is. God forbid to let Satan in to stop it. Can you imagine Satan's power he must have had to try and stop the temple being built? Nothing greater than building the Beis Hamikdash for Hashem. So the spiritual forces which are there to detract us, to impede us, to curtail the mitzvah, as we said last week, before someone gets married, often those last few weeks are very, very intense because the Yetzer Hara is trying to spoil things. Before Shabbos, the Yetzer Hara is trying to spoil things. So you get an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Not only do you have to do it straight away, then you have to do it speedily. Not in a careless way, God forbid. Not in a frantic way, not in a frenetic way, but in a very passionate, diligent, excellent, time-consuming way where maybe you don't sleep. You're just all in. You do all-nighters until it's complete. Because God forbid, you start it and it doesn't finish. You have to really think what that means for you. That means maybe next time you get involved with a charity project, or next time you get involved, with a mitzvah project. Try and put your whole, life and soul into it to make it happen. Because if you kind of just half-hearted, before you know it, it may not even be achieved. Do you know how many ideas there are in life? When you talk about startups, they say in Israel, many of my students are in startup companies. The majority of startups never get started, right? They're just ideas which never come to fruition. So especially when you have a mitzvah startup, the mitzvah startups that will succeed are those that really want it all the way through, and those that are prepared to not give in to any distraction that comes their way and just bulldozes through those distractions to achieve it. That's why now we understand a famous piece of Genesis. If you look at the beginning of Bereshis, amazing story. If you go to my J Network 613 page and on YouTube, you'll see my talk on Abraham, and I speak about this, and on the altruism talk, where Avram Avinu, who embodies kindness, but he doesn't just do acts of kindness. I'll tell you the story very briefly. He's sitting outside his tent. He's 99 years old. He's had circumcision. Not a nice day in the park for a 99-year-old at the best of times, right? You've had circumcision, pretty painful stuff. And then 3 days later, which is the most painful, from here we learned that normally 3 days after your operation is the hardest day. The drugs are wearing off. You're struggling the most. It was 3 days after his operation. But he's not in bed. He's not in bed self-indulging. What does Avram Avinu say? Avinu says, I need to be out there doing kindness. It's hot out there. There must be travelers who are very thirsty, who need looking after, who need care for. I want to be out there for them. So he's out there sitting like this, but on a chair outside his tent, looking for guests in the boiling, boiling heat. And Hashem is like, Abraham, just go to bed. Just go to bed. Can you go to bed, please? Vayeri lav Hashem Avram. I want to come and visit you. We learn the mitzvah that Hashem does hachnosos, that Hashem does bikul cholim. The mitzvah of visiting the sick. There's a mitzvah in the Torah to visit the sick is learnt out from God to Abraham. Isn't that amazing? that normally it's, God is the actual role model in how to perform the mitzvah. Hashem went to visit Abraham, whatever that means. And Abraham had the audacity to say to Hashem, it's really an inconvenient time. I'm sorry, can you come back? I have some idolaters outside that might need looking after. Can you imagine? How rude is that? Like the queen comes for tea and you say, sorry, Queenie, not convenient. Put it in my diary when I haven't got any volunteering to do. Can you imagine? We'll be off with your head if we did that, right? Or off to see Harry and Meghan, right? And therefore, now, what's Avram do? He managed to say to Hashem, sorry. He says to Hashem, go away. So now Hashem says, okay, I'm the boss, not you. He makes it so hot that it's impossible to last. But there's no stopping Abraham. Avram is to Hashem, I don't care how hot it is. Like, I know Hashem, you really want me to be out here. And Hashem says, you're right. And he sends him 3 guests, 3 beautiful angels, Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael, who are coming in. And as soon as they come, Abraham then says that he was sitting like this. And it says, Vayar, he's looking out, Vayisa'enov, his eyes pop up, which means he's on the lookout, Vayisa'enov, Vayar, and then he sees. Because he was already on the lookout, and then he sees them, and then it says, Vayorot, he runs, which means from a sitting position. If I do it now, I'm going to really hurt my knee, so I'm not going to jump out of my chair, if that's okay with you. Normally I jump out, but my table's right by me, right? So he jumps out, literally from a sitting position. He's 99 years old. He had bris milah 3 days ago, but he's on the run. He's literally running. He's so excited. Oh my gosh, I've got some punters. I've got some guests to look after. And by the way, normally, like if you're in I'm sure pubs now are very, very excited because they haven't had guests for a year, right? So they're excited the first 2 clients that come in. Avram Avinu, they weren't making him money. He was doing things for them. They were actually giving him spiritual currency, to be fair, but he's on the run to them, and that's not enough. Do you know what he says? He goes crazy. He goes, Yishmael, Maher, quickly, come. He starts saying, quickly. He goes to Sarah. He gets his WhatsApp out and says, Mahari, hurry. He's hurrying everybody to what's the rush? Chill out, don't hyperventilate. Why are you rushing so much? Because Avraham Avinu knows the secret. He knows the secret. A mitzvah comes your way, do not delay. Told you it rhymes. Mitzvah comes your way, do not delay. Rush, like anything to complete it before, God forbid, something gets in the way. And he's literally getting everyone rushing round. That's how tzaddikim were. They're rushing to places. Not in a way which is unhealthy, but in a very focused, excited, deliberate way to ensure they're going to get it done, no matter what. And actually, they're even moving fast. They're even fast pace. I told you last week, watch the way you walk to places. Often, if you walk very slowly somewhere, you normally don't really want to go. Whereas, actually, the more you're excited about going somewhere, there's more speed in what you're doing. So now I'm going to finish off with this very, very deep secret, which is what happens if you're not really feeling it. What happens if you don't really want to go fast? Maybe you're a very calm person. You like to take your time and do deep breathing. What happens if you're like that? So I've got a very deep secret for you, which is, and it's a bit of a paradox, so stay with me, it's a little bit mystical. Normally what we say is, the root of what you do is what you want to do. As Rabbi Dessler says, normally we say, Rotzoin ha'odam hu'ma'oseh. What your inner deepest want is, reflects the outside. Normally, your inner reflects the outer. However, the paradox is sometimes the outer can affect the inner as well. That's why I've said the phrase probably to many of you many times, fake it to make it. But fake it to make it doesn't mean let's pretend. It means let's wake up my soul. Let's wake me up. My soul really does want it. My soul really does want it. It's just my Yetzer Hara is in the way. There's a lot of blockages. So by running and rushing and moving fast and moving my body, and clapping my hands and like being passionate, that's actually arousing my soul. That's arousing my want, which means my outer is now changing my inner, which is crazy deep, really deep. Nice to see you, Miriam. And you've got to really work out how that affects you in your life, how in your life your outer can affect your inner. So sometimes just putting on that cheery smile, you will start feeling happier. Okay, try it. I want you to try it now. Everyone give a smile, right? Just do a big smile, right? Big smile, right? Not like the cheese smile on the... Isn't that funny, actually? Often when you go, see, you're feeling happier now, right? So sorry if I put you in a bad mood, right? So sometimes like if you go and, you know, when you're going like to a wedding or something and the photographer says, you know, smile, and they start making these silly gags, getting you to smile. Actually, it's quite funny sometimes. You start feeling, funny enough, even if you're not in a good mood, you can start smiling. You actually start smiling inside, which is really interesting. So that's just a good example. To smile outside, which means you can smile inside. But now we're saying something else. You start doing things with enthusiasm. So you're moving your body, right? And you're moving and you're fasting. Well, now you know, well, if you see me pray sometimes, I'll be like shuckling like crazy, right? Sometimes I'm moving my body, right? And it's really funny. You know, if you check out one of my dear friends, you know, he's a famous pop singer called Alex Clare. And one of the things is when he became religious, when he became a real Torah scholar, which he is, a huge Torah scholar, when I saw him, if you look at the video too close, I think, on that thing, he starts shuckling when he's singing. He learned how to shuckle. Yeshiva taught him how to shuckle, right? We like shuckling. Shuckling is a good thing. And now we're saying the good thing about shuckling is it's waking your soul up. So sometimes when you're praying, your neshama is like a bit, like not your neshama, God forbid. Your Yetzer Hara is like, how long more to go? You know, I'm a bit tired, I'm a bit hungry, obviously hungry because we like talking about food as Jews, right? So, you know, we need to eat a bit. You know, I've been in shul already for 5 minutes. Surely I need to eat something now, right? So we're starting to worrying about food and we're starting getting a bit bored. So you know what? You start shuckling, you start moving and you start going to the sway, and before in it takes you back into the zone again. So you need to learn in your life how to get into the zone. And now I'll teach you something even deeper, which is worth staying for the past 54 minutes, or for this, which the people that came just 2 minutes ago, you got lucky or not lucky. And it goes like this. Listen up. Let's quit l'chaim. Listen to this. So we're saying if the outer can impact the inner, so now watch this. That's why your actions can influence the highest inner, which is Hashem's actions, which King David says, Hashem tzilcha. And that's why we have this idea and this principle called law of attraction, or what we call emunah. And again, please go to if you want to hear more about it, David, I think you're joining us for the first time, go to this J Network 613 and go to the law of attraction talk, right? And then you'll see the full talk of it. But in short, the more you want it, the more you fake it, it not just changes your inner world, it changes the way Hashem relates to you too. So deep. So for example, there's an amazing Gemara in Chagiga, page 15, which says the following. It says, Rabbi Bar Hona was walking in the street and he saw, nonetheless, but Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. Now me and you, if we saw Eliyahu Hanavi, we wouldn't know it was him, Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet is one of these great mystical, angelic figures that can come into every generation. You've met one day, he comes in different guises. If you're a really great mystic, you know who he is when he comes into your vicinity. So he knew it was Eliyahu Hanavi. He says, Eliyahu Hanavi, tell me what's going on in Gan Eden right now? Like, what's happening upstairs? It's like when you ask, like, what's on BBC One? What's on ITV? So Lahavdil, bin Kodesh Lachol, right? He's saying, what's going on in Gan Eden right now? So Eliyahu Hanavi says, let me just think, let me hear, let me listen. Hashem's teaching Torah, Hashem's giving a class, and he's saying, Omar Hillel says this, Omar Shammai says this. So Rabbi Rav Huna was very excited. He goes, what about my teacher? Is he quoting Rabbi Meir? Is Hashem quoting Rabbi Meir? So Eliyahu Hanavi goes a bit solemn-faced and looks a bit sad and says, no, Hashem, we don't mention Rabbi Meir. He doesn't talk about Rabbi Meir. So his student's like really upset. Like, what about my teacher? What about what's wrong with Rabbi Meir? And Eliyahu Hanavi, don't you know Rabbi Meir? He learned from a rabbi who went very bad. He was called, became acher, he became a heretic. And then after his teacher became a heretic, Rabbi Meir kept learning with him. So Hashem, is very pure. The Torah from Hashem is the purest. He doesn't go to impure places. And now Rabbi's very upset. Rabbi Rafona says to Eliyahu Novi, Chas v'sholem, God forbid you should say that. He said, my rabbi, he knew how to filter what was true and what was not true. He was only doing it to help his teacher because he loved his teacher. He was trying to bring him back. Eliyahu Novi said, 1 minute. Hashem saying, Omar Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is saying, he's now quoting Rabbi Meir. The mystics say, 1 minute, but Hashem knew that Rabbi Meir knew how to filter out information. But Hashem was waiting for us down here to change our reality, and then Hashem was able to change his reality. Do you know how deep that is? Do you know how crazy that is? That means our thoughts affect the way Hashem reacts to us. Our actions affect the way Hashem feels towards us, sends us the Shefa. We've just had Shavuot, we've been living a very, very scary time during this pandemic. During the tragedy in Meron, another tragedy last week, another tragedy in Italy, Rabboni Shalom, all the tragedies. We're looking for a change of shift. Maybe one of the things we need to do is really, really embrace happiness, embrace unity, embrace inspiration, and maybe our actions will be able to change the way Hashem then is reacting to us. It's not simply a top-down relationship. At times it's a bottom-up relationship. Our actions, our thoughts not only changes our inner world, but changes the highest of the highest worlds. And that's one of the secrets of this beautiful idea called Zerizus, that the more you do things with enthusiasm and passion, the more you're going to give a lot of joy to Hashem, and the more we're able to ascend and climb the spiritual ladder. So wishing you all tremendous Hatzlacha in your lives, and bracha and Yeshua, and all your tefillot, all your prayers. Hashem should answer l'tova for good. Hashem should inspire you to pray. Hashem should inspire you to have opportunities to do mitzvahs, and Hashem should then enable you to be able to complete the mitzvahs before, God forbid, the Yetzarim gets in to try and stop it. So, wishing you all a beautiful week. Looking forward to see you on Wednesday night. On Wednesday night at 7:30 for a very deep talk on this week's Sedra called Shalach Lecha, the story of the spies. We're going to go super deep. And please join me Wednesday night. It's going to be on Facebook and on Instagram. Thank you so much, Edward, for sponsoring. Yes, question about Sheva. Go for it.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, how do you balance? Obviously, it's very important to be a Zerizus and to be busy with mitzvahs, etc. But you also sometimes need downtime to, as you said, meditate and be close to Hashem and sit still and be with yourself. So how do you balance that?
Very good question. So number one, balance is critical. Right, it is about balance. But I always, you know the movie Finding Nemo, and I think sometimes finding balance is one of life's hardest, dichotomies, because just to get that balance, we call it Tiferes, just to get the Tiferes right is super complex. But for that, you need to know yourself, you need to have self-awareness, you need to be true to yourself, you need to maybe speak to people around you that care about you, they're objective, maybe speak to your rabbi, speak to people that you respect. Sometimes if you're not sure exactly, and everyone's different. Hashem gives us all a different body and a different faculties and different needs, and we have to know ourselves. But on the other hand, maybe do that a little bit more than the rational brain will say. Because we have an infinite soul, and that infinite soul is capable of so much more. I think I've told you before, I've told some of you before, that I had an illness. I still suffer from an illness called ME, and when I got ME, in my first year, I was just in bed the whole time. My body couldn't move, and could have well ended up in a wheelchair. And there was a certain point when I just wasn't going to listen to my body anymore. And it's interesting. A lot of doctors say the whole treatment of ME is you've got to take things very carefully. Listen to your body. Baruch Hashem, I didn't. I'm just talking from my personal experience, right? So I listened to my body, I wouldn't have been able to give you a talk tonight, right? I just said, Hashem, I'm just moving forward. And I reprogrammed my mind and my body to be able to function. And to, so I do have to sometimes rest, and I do have to sometimes eat healthily, and I do have to sometimes just take care, right? And have balance. But on the other hand, Baruch Hashem, my body's not my master. My body's not, Hashem is my master. The Torah is my master. I try and do what I need to do, and I take my body with me, and I feed my body, and I look after it. Some of the time, probably need to do a little bit more, right? But it's getting that balance. But in other words, don't just listen to your body. That's something very dangerous, because the Yetzer Hara can get in and say, oh, I need to take things very easy. I need to have at least 3 months off doing nothing. Just 3 months. What's 3 months? Just 3 months. Just 3 months. I'm sure Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash in 3 months. We can change the world. In 3 weeks, we can change the world. In 3 days. Who's got 3 months? We haven't got time for 3 months just to take off. Sorry. So we just have to know that balance. Hope that's answered your question. Anyone else? Any other questions? Good. Have a very, very enthusiastic week, everybody. Any questions on Facebook? Some saying goodbye to Zoom. Goodbye, Zoom. And on Facebook, any questions on Facebook? Nice to see you, Rivka. Please God, you'll be seeing Rabbi Hill in person. I hope you're going to be in Israel. You're going to be in Israel, Rivka, in Elul, in the month of Elul. I'm hoping to start some programming in the land of Israel in Elul. So I hope to see some of you there. I want to do a program in Jerusalem, and in Tel Aviv, and in Tzfat. And with Hashem's help, Uman as well. So nice to see you. Hope to see you soon. Any questions on Facebook? So with that said, I'll love you and leave you, and see you, please God, on Wednesday night. Message me if you have anything you want to chat about. Take care. God bless. Bye.